Welcome to One More Mana. My name is Derek, and today I'm going to be coming at you with a deck tech for the Haunt of Hightower. Now, I know everybody's super excited for all the new legendary creatures in Ravnica Allegiance. There's a few that seem really cool to build around, but in my opinion, the most exciting one is the Buy a Box promo, which is the Haunt of Hightower. Now, the Haunt is 4 and 2 black for a 3/3 flying lifelink vampire. And obviously that's not the cool part. The cool part is whenever he attacks, whoever the player is being attacked has to discard a card. And whenever a card goes to an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, he gets a +1/+1 counter. Now this is a really cool ability, and we're really going to want to take full advantage of the fact that a card can go to the graveyard from anywhere. Obviously he has a discard effect built into him, so we're going to want to take advantage of some discard effects, but there's a lot of better ways to get cards to the graveyard in mass. Whether it's mill, board wipes, sacrifice effects, there's a lot of things we can do to get cards into the graveyard, and in this deck we're really going to take advantage of all of those. Basically, we use these effects to get cards in mass to the graveyard, kind of control the board, and then use him as a Voltron finisher. Now, in a deck like this, and as you'll see, 6 mana is a lot for any type of Voltron-ish commander. With Voltron, a lot of the time you want to rely on that commander damage to win the game, and if you need 6 mana to get out your general, that's a lot, because if he gets killed once or twice, you're dropping 10 mana to cast him. It's a lot. But fortunately, Mono Black has ways to make tons of mana, and as I go through this deck tech, you'll kind of get an idea of how we want to do this. So how this is going to work is I'll just briefly go through each category of card in the deck and kind of highlight my favorites and what I feel like really helps the deck run best. All the card names will all pop up on the screen, and there will be the full deck list posted on Tapped Out with an extended explanation of exactly what makes this deck work. So, starting with the creatures, as you can see, there are 21 creatures in the deck, which is kind of high for a Voltron deck. You tend to want, usually, mostly support cards in a Voltron deck, so that general is the one threat. And in all honesty, that ends up being the weakness of a lot of Voltron decks. The cool thing about this is having lots of other creatures that can serve as threats in and of themselves can actually support buffing the Haunt and making him the threat. One of the first creatures I really want to highlight is Geth, Lord of the Vault. He is 4 and 2 black for a 5/5 creature with Intimidate. That doesn't matter too much. He has an activated ability though of X and a black. Basically what it lets you do is pay X to get an artifact or a creature out of a graveyard, bring it into play tapped. Which is cool, but the best part is then you mill target opponent for X cards. Now, one of the kind of difficulties in building this deck was his effect leads you to want to either do wheel effects or mass mill effects, and the problem is most wheel effects are in red and most mass mill effects involve blue. But Geth is one of the most powerful mono black mill cards. This is crazy with a lot of the ramp we have in this deck to just be able to mill somebody for X. This can in one turn make the Haunt massive. And on top of that, this is an activated ability. If he's out and you swing with the Haunt and someone doesn't block, in response, you can just mill somebody for a ton of cards and make the Haunt massive and just commander them out on the spot. It's super powerful. This is a really strong effect, and really, he's probably the best creature in the deck. The next card I want to highlight is Massacre Worm. It's 3 and 3 black for a 6/5 big worm. And its effect is when it comes into the battlefield, creatures your opponents control all get -2/-2, and which is cool, but what makes it even better is whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. Now this is amazing because, again, to get cards to the battlefield, because we're a mono black, we're going to be taking advantage of a lot of kill all creature effects. So it basically just supplements what we're already doing is the reason why this card's so great. One, it can send a bunch of cards to the graveyard to help the Haunt, but in addition, it also just feeds into that strategy. If the Haunt's out, perfect, you get 2 for the price of 1. You get a giant Haunt of Hightower and your opponent's losing life. Worst case, if the Haunt has been basically taxed out of what you're able to spend on him, then perfect. They're just losing life and you're winning the game in that way. The next card I want to highlight is one of my personal favorites in this deck. It's Phyrexian Obliterator. It has trample, and whenever a source deals damage to it, that source's controller has to sacrifice that many permanents. Now this is amazing because you swing in with this, and if they have to chump, and 5/5 is a decent sized body, if they need to chump block or anything, they just start having to sack permanents. Now, obviously, it doesn't have protection, so instants and stuff can serve to remove it. But if you're able to swing with this, they're either just taking 5 to the face, or if they do choose to block it, they're stacking permanents, which in turn should be making your haunt huge. And the last creature I really want to highlight is Sadistic Hypnotist. It's 3 and 2 black for a 2/2. And he lets you, at sorcery speed, sacrifice a creature and target opponent discards 2 cards. Now, if you look at the deck list, you realize there are a decent number of token generating creatures in this deck, mainly because we want to get fodder for cards like this. If you can get, a few creatures that are expendable on your board and you are just able to sack them and have, people discarding down, it's the benefits are twofold. You're going to just get rid of people's hands and get rid of any answers they may have. And each time you're buffing the Haunt of Hightower more and more, which is amazing and really just feeds into what we need to do. Now, the next category, we're going to look at the instants in the deck. There's only 2, so I'll just go over both of them really briefly. The first one is one of my all-time favorite cards. It's called Tainted Strike. It's just 1 black mana at instant speed. You give a creature +1/+0 and infect. This is insanely powerful with a commander like this because the Haunt already has evasion to begin with, and it doesn't take much to get it to a 10/10, which is all the infect you need to kill something, or in reality a 9/9, because this gives it +1/+0. Instant speed infect tricks are it's cruel. I mean, it's so strong, and really, a lot of the time, people don't always have a flyer. If you're able to get it to a 9/9, which is super realistic considering how many mass destruction effects we have and how many discard effects and mill effects, you can just take somebody out just like that. And the second instant we have in this deck is Grisly Spectacle. I really like cards like this that serve just the general purpose of the deck but synchronize really well with what your commander wants to do. Every deck needs targeted removal, but to have a destroy a creature effect like this but to have it synchronized so well with your commander is amazing. It really it's so helpful. And again, this can serve as a combat trick in all honesty, because what you can do is when the Haunt swings, Grisly Spectacle something, kill it, and then whatever its power is, you mill somebody for. I mean, that twofold kind of purpose that we're going to get out of a lot of the cards in this deck is really kind of what makes it run and what makes some of these cards shine. Planeswalkers, we're only going to run 1 Planeswalker, and it's Liliana Vest. Now, having this card is it's super helpful. Worst case, literally in this deck, its worst case is Tutor. Best case is you're able to keep +1/+8, getting people discarding cards and buffing your general. Again, it has kind of a twofold purpose, and it's exactly what we want to do. So, moving on to the sorceries, there's 8 of them in the deck. I'm going to highlight 3 real quick that all basically serve the same purpose. They are Ingarrick's Wake, Kindred Dominance, and Toxic Deluge. Now, Ingarrick's Wake and the Kindred Dominance are kind of self-explanatory. One-sided board wipes, you kill a bunch of stuff, save the Haunt of Hightower, and let it get huge. Toxic Deluge was a less obvious choice, but once I stopped and thought about it, a lot of the time your Haunt of Hightower is going to be big. It's going to have a lot of +1 counters on it. So, if you can give everything -5/-5 with Toxic Deluge, a lot of the time your Haunt of Hightower is going to be able to survive, and you're going to be able to kill almost everything else on the board and get it even bigger. So they all kind of serve as a one-sided board wipe, and it's a great way to send stuff to the graveyard in mass, as well as protecting yourself. A lot of the time in a Voltron deck, you can get completely overrun with a number of creatures on the board, and if an opponent tries to swarm you, and these kind of help to keep your opponents in check and advance your strategy. Now, looking at artifacts, there are 19 in this deck. There's a lot of artifacts. This tends to be very common in monocolored decks. You tend to use artifacts to make up for whatever your color can't do. Another one of the just all-stars in this deck is Blade of the Blood Chief. So whenever a creature dies, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on a equipped creature, but you get 2 +1/+1 counters if it's a vampire. If this is equipped to the Haunt of Hightower, every time an opponent's creature dies, it gets 3 +1/+1 counters. You only need 21 commander damage to kill somebody. This can get out of control so fast. And it's 1 mana to play, 1 mana to equip. This card is it might be the best card in the deck. It's insane, and it really can help you get to that 21 commander damage fast. The next one I want to talk about is Geth's Grimoire. It's a 4 mana artifact, and it says whenever an opponent discards a card, you may draw a card. Now, I mentioned that I didn't try to fill this with discard effects. I kind of focused more on mass creature destruction and mill. But the thing is, the commander himself has discard built in. So basically what this turns into is every time your commander swings, someone discards a card and you draw a card. And because it's already built into your commander, it's a very solid card draw engine because every combat you're basically going to want to be swinging with the Haunt. Whoever doesn't have a flyer, they're getting attacked. So this is a very, very good way to generate card advantage, especially in a monocolored deck. It gives you some flexibility. The last artifacts I really want to emphasize are part of the mill package. Now, there's Altar of Dementia, Altar of the Brood, Mindcrank, and Mesmeric Orb. These kind of speak for themselves, but especially Mindcrank and Mesmeric Orb are just ridiculous in this deck. With Mesmeric Orb, I mean, you can have your commander easily be a 30-30 from one turn of the table if they don't kill it. Mindcrank essentially serves the same purpose, because if you have the Haunt of Hightower swinging at somebody, it essentially just doubles his power every time he connects. Because when they're taking the damage, they're milling, and then you're just putting that many. It's ridiculous. It essentially reads double his power when he deals combat damage. It's ridiculous. Again, unfortunately, Mono Black doesn't have a ton of mill, but the mill that is available is super powerful. Looking at the enchantments, there are 11. The first two I really want to talk about are Grave Pact and Dictate of Erebos. You'll notice when I mentioned the creatures and talked about them, I didn't talk a lot about both the token producers and the sacrifice outlets, but kind of getting into this category is when I feel like I should really emphasize it. If you look at the creature list, there are a decent number that are going to give you either recurring value like a Reassembling Skeleton or just huge token generators like a Grave Titan. Now, using these cards in conjunction with Dictate of Erebos and Grave Pact, this is a phenomenal way just to wipe your opponent's boards of creatures at all times. There's plenty of sacrifice effects in this deck, and just in Mono Black in general, there are a lot of sacrifice effects. And this, again, serves a double purpose. One, it combats the most easy way to destroy a Voltron deck, which is just swarm them with creatures and they can't handle it. If you're using Grave Pact and Dictate of Erebos, and you can kind of keep their creature count low, or you can keep it manageable, you'll be able to stay alive for a lot longer so you don't just get overrun. And two, every time one of these triggers, something's dying, the Haunt's getting bigger. It's amazing, and they really do serve that double purpose that keeps you both serves to keep you alive and further your winning strategy. And there's just two more enchantments that I really want to talk about. One of them is Words of Waste, and you pay one for an activated ability that says if you were to draw a card, instead of drawing, you have each opponent discard a card. It's kind of a strange card, but it's one of those where if you have enough cards in hand, and there's plenty of card draw in this deck, if there's a time where you just don't need the card advantage, spend the 1 mana and have each other player discard a card and buff the Haunt. Because in all honesty, in this deck, once you get some pieces down, if you have your Haunt out, if you have some equipment on it, or if you have Mindcrank or something out and you have pieces in place, you kind of want the board to stay the way it is. So you don't mind not drawing cards as long as your opponents don't have cards either. Because at that point, you have everything you need to win on the battlefield. So this card can be a weird way of it doesn't really serve as card advantage, but it keeps everybody kind of at an even playing field while still buffing your Haunt. And the last one I want to talk about is Sanguine Bond. This card is amazing in this deck. Because really, the Haunt is his main means of evasion is flying. If you have an opponent's board with a bunch of flyers, it doesn't have trample or anything like that. But the thing is that lifelink's still going to trigger, so you can still gain a whole bunch of life. With Sanguine Bond, if they use a chump blocker, you're still going to gain all that life, and then you can just have them lose that much life. And it's a great kind of alternative to trample in this deck that serves a double purpose, and it's really, really a useful way to get damage through. Not to mention, if you do connect, it just basically doubles the damage you're dealing. So it works really well with what we want to do. So looking at the land base, we're running 37 lands. I usually like to run at least 37, so I guess it's kind of on the low side, but there's a lot of ramp, which can kind of make up for it. We're running Snow-Covered Swamps, mainly because when you use that in conjunction with Extra Planar Lens, it's just a great way to get a one-sided mana doubling effect that in this deck we really do need because we want as much mana as possible. Now we're running both Cabal Coffers and Cabal Stronghold because I love Cabal Stronghold, but that whole basic swamp thing obviously made it much less useful than Cabal Coffers. But in Mono Black, doesn't matter so much. So both of those are going to serve as huge, huge ramp spells. We're going to run Nykthos as well to, again, ramp. It's Mono Black, so our devotion to black. A lot of black cards in general require a lot of black mana symbols, so Nykthos will serve to be amazing in this deck. So those are all the categories. Really hope you like this deck as much as I do. What I'm going to do now is something I'll do in every deck tech. Basically, I want to end every one with this segment, and in the wise words of Herm Edwards,
hello, You play to win the game.
And I realize, I don't know if it's just me, but a lot of the time when I build decks, I get so excited about creating value engines or cool synergies or pulling out cards I never heard of before that I dirtle a lot, and I just forget, winning the game is kind of a part of it. So again, listening to Herm, I'm trying to play to win the game, and in this game-winning step, I'm going to emphasize some cards to help you do that. The first card I'm going to talk about is the Haunt of Hightower himself. He serves as a Voltron commander damage game-ending win condition, especially used in conjunction with Tainted Strike. Attacking in combat damage, commander damage, a very straightforward way to win the game. Now, non-combat, there's quite a few ways. You could use a card like Aetherflux Reservoir, take advantage of the lifelink, and gain enough life to just start picking players off. Now, another win con, and these are going to be some of the win cons that you'll kind of just sneak out, which is really good because a lot of time in Voltron decks, if you just lose your board state, it could be devastating. If you lose all your equipment or it could just set you so far back. So these can let you take wins kind of when it's not expected. That's Torment of Hellfire and Exsanguinate. These cards are phenomenal, and in all honesty, Exsanguinate really does synchronize well with Aetherflux as well because you're going to be gaining so much life from it. But obviously, you don't need me to talk about these cards. These are some of the most famous EDH win cons there are. But again, with as much ramp as we have, they're super necessary. Alright, so thank you guys so much. Please let me know what you think. Check out the deck list down in the description. Let me know about some suggestions. Again, this card is brand new, so there are probably some very obvious additions that I'm forgetting. I would love to hear what you have to say. Love to hear some feedback. And I will see you next time. Down in the description, go check out our Tapped Out page. One More Mana has a channel page now on Tapped Out where we're going to post all the deck lists so you guys can see them at your own convenience. So please check them out and subscribe.